Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. I'm really excited for this week's episode. I'm here with Coach Amber, and Coach Amber is an Elevate Your Running coach, run coach. She's also been a friend of mine since really, I think, the beginning of the pandemic or during the pandemic. We got together through Instagram to go for some runs in Boulder, and she's here today. And I think we're going to have a really, really great conversation. It's going to be a coaching conversation with Coach Amber, talking all about unlocking potential. And I think we can all relate to this. This is something that I think we all want to unlock. It's something that we all want to achieve. We're striving to do better. And when I say better, that looks different for every single one of us, which is, in my opinion, the coolest part about running. We all have different process and outcome goals and what running looks like for us. So, welcome to the podcast, Coach Amber.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me. This will be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. And we were talking offline. I'm like, I would love to have this become like a monthly thing that we do where we get to come together, chat, and have just a really great running conversation. So before we get into this week's episode, we're going to highlight some elevated moments. The team has been so great sending in their elevated moments. So a few that I've received over Final Surge over the last week from athletes that both Amber and I coach are, this run is definitely my elevated moment. And that is from Terry, who ran her longest long run ever, coming in at 9.69 miles. And she is on her way to running a half marathon. And I think we can all relate to when we're running that, like, our longest long run of all time. And that could be at the very beginning of our running season. It could be, or running career. It could be at the very beginning of our first marathon training cycle. In Terry's case, it's the half marathon. And it's so exciting to hear and see that, and also see her progress and all the joy and positivity that can come from going the distance and doing something that you've never done before, PRing a new distance. I remember when I did that, and it was so cool and so inspiring, and it just made me want to work even harder the next week. So the second elevated moment is from Michelle, and she said her elevated moment is getting through her second week of work while also getting her running schedule dialed in, and she's feeling so much better about everything. And I love that, because I think anytime we go through seasons in life and we have a shift in our work schedule, our training cycle, our family schedule, we're trying to make everything work. That unknown is something that can be anxiety provoking, and we don't really know what's on the other side of it. Michelle feels like she has 2 full weeks under her belt, and she feels dialed in with her new schedule. I know she has to get up and run maybe a little bit earlier. She doesn't have as much time in the morning, so that's always a tough place to be. So way to go, Michelle. And the last elevated moment is from, I believe this is from Austin, and he says he ran 2 short and easy runs this week without his compression sleeves, and he hopes that's a great sign that his ankles and his calves are getting even stronger. Austin's going for a half marathon in Indiana in October, and he's coming back after having some niggles, some injuries. So being able to run and run speed workouts, he joins the Wednesday night group in Denver, having those speed workouts, getting to be able to run pain free and feeling stronger is such a huge win. So, way to go, Austin. All right, Amber, it's your opportunity. I'd love to hear what your elevated moment is of the week.
Well, this is the first week in a long time that I have felt 100% health wise. So I had a ton of energy this week. I've been dealing with low ferritin levels for some time now, but I felt a lot of energy this week. And I have had foot pain off and on for years because I've been accessory navicular bone that just causes a lot of tendonitis, especially when I run a lot. But no foot pain and lots of energy this week. So it was a really good week.
That's a great week. That is a great week. And I'm so happy that you're getting, hopefully, on the other side of the energy fiasco and debacle. And like, having that higher ferritin and kind of leaning into, I know you've been doing a lot of things to work on it over the last few years. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah,
week.
great. Um, Amazing. And I would say my elevated moment of the week is that I get to run my first 20-mile long run on Sunday. This is going into the Indianapolis Marathon. I'm excited to do that. It's 20 easy, which isn't always, I think, the easiest long run to get through. It's such a grind on some levels, but I think it's it's going to be a great run. And I think the true elevated moment in this long run is that my training partner, Jenna, is amazing and she has to take a few weeks off from running. So she's going to bike next to me. So we're still in it together. We're still teammates. We're still doing it. And I think that's really cool because I've never actually had someone bike with me while running a long run. And it's been like everything I've wanted out of like a relationship. And so I get it out of my training relationship with Jenna. So I think it'll be really, really fun. And um, it'll be a great time on Sunday morning.
You can feel like a true elite, right?
She did say she's going to hold my bottles and my gels, which I absolutely love because I know I need to practice with my handheld, but for anyone who is a heavy water drinker during their long runs, like I am, thinking about a 20-mile long run, and it's still going to be probably 70 degrees ish when I'm in the second half of that run. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. And to think about the logistics of that and how much to bring, and do I need to drop water beforehand? Are we doing loops so I can circle back and add more water? It's wild. Like last weekend I ran 16 miles. It was pretty warm and I consumed close to 55 ounces of water on that run. So it's a problem
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a problem. And so it's going to be great. But it'll be a lot of fun. So
And when you get really tired and you're like, oh, I don't want to do, the last 3 miles or whatever because you're just getting tired, you can just tell her to, tell you some fun stories. I've been that for other people before, where I'm just telling them all sorts of random stories to get them out of their head and just focusing on, one foot in front of the other. So it'll be
yeah, exactly. Cause yeah, like I said last week, I ran 16. So and I'm 11 weeks out from my marathon. So if you're doing the math, you know that I haven't run between 16 and 20 yet. So I'm pretty sure by mile 17 I'll be wanting to stop and ready for that run to be over. So it'll be nice to have company in that regard. And she's so positive. We have this really great energy between us, and we're we have a lot of fun. We have great energy. So I think it's going to be really fun to have that next to me when I'm running. I don't know if you've had that experience of like running with someone or having someone with you on a run and like the energy just isn't right. And it's like, oh, wow, this is actually like harder having you with me than if I was just alone.
like my husband
Yeah.
whenever he's come with me. Yeah, pretty much. He's like, "Are you going to keep going? Because I have things to do today."
That's so funny.
Not great
Yeah.
energy there.
Yeah. 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 Past boyfriends for sure. And I'm like, well, maybe this means this isn't like supposed to be because they are annoying the, they're annoying me so much right now. Like, just get away from me. I want to run. So that's great. All right. Well, I want to dive into you as a runner, you as a running coach, and also some stories that you have that you've experienced and kind of talking through that potential as runners and as athletes. So I'd love to kick off this episode with what and or who inspired you to become a runner and to become a coach?
So I first started running about 16 years ago. I did not run in high school or middle school or anything like that. I wasn't into any sports actually. I was into like looking at cute boys, and I always worked. I always had a lot of jobs, but I just was not athletic. So about 16 years ago, I'd had two kids. I had my boys when I was 22 and 24, so super young. And when I was 29, I was like, okay, I got to get in shape. Like I just felt like I hadn't been exercising in years, and now the kids were a little bit older, and I could leave them with others and not feel bad about it. And so I decided to start getting into shape. So my friend and I decided to do a sprint triathlon. So we started training together for the run, the bike, and the swim. I'm a horrible swimmer, so that was fun. But when I started running, I just went outside and ran 3 miles without having to train for it. Like I just ran 3 miles. It was obviously slow, but I could do it. And that made me feel a lot of confidence. Like, even though I haven't been exercising, maybe I'm okay at running. Maybe this is something that I could develop and get really good at. And so we did the little sprint triathlon and it was fun, but I knew I never wanted to swim anymore. I did end up doing a half Ironman later, which is a whole nother story. But the bike was fun, but the run was just where I fell in love. So I just picked up from there and kept running. I just kept going from there, and then it really turned into not worrying about my shape, but worrying about improving my endurance and my pace and things like that. I'm super goal oriented, and so I just had a lot of fun with setting new goals. Like now I'm going to do a 10K. Now I'm going to try to do a 10K in this amount of time, and just kept going and going. Um, I kind of plateaued at one point, and I decided at that point in time to hire my own coach because I wasn't really sure what I was doing wrong and how I could improve. And that's where I learned a ton. I learned so much from him on just how coaching works, how I cannot just use any plan that's generic and for anyone because I had so many variables at play, so many things that I was wanting to do. And he took all of that and he gave me weekly plans where he was plugging in where exactly I was and where he was looking ahead to where he wanted me to be, plugging in those paces and those distances and giving me really fun workouts. And so I loved it. I had a couple other coaches after him where I just continued to learn things. And then I realized that I loved it so much that I wanted to be a coach. So I've been coaching for about 4 years now.
That's amazing. Did you self coach yourself before starting with and partnering with your first coach? Or were you going into training like, I'll just do what I can when I can and put some random things together without any like true plan in place?
Yeah, it was pretty random. In fact,
Yeah.
my first marathon, I mostly trained on the treadmill because I just was like, well, I don't really want to be outside in the dark and I have to be, home by a certain time for my kids and all these things. And so I was mostly on the treadmill for my first marathon and I had no idea how many miles I was supposed to be like running and training, how hard, nothing. So after that marathon, I couldn't walk for a long time. it was like a good week of limping around and another week of like half limping around. So, but I learned a lot, and then that was the only time that I went into a race without any training like that. Um, I had miles under me. I just had no plan whatsoever. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's really fascinating. We're gonna go off on a little side tangent here. What was your longest long run for that build?
I think I did 18 one
Okay.
time, but it was on the treadmill,
Yeah.
watching like I don't know how many episodes of something at the time. A long time ago. It was like 2009, I believe. So yeah, a lot of episodes of some random show and at a very slow pace and on flat, like a 0% incline. And then the marathon that I did was actually like an ultra trail. So
Oh,
that was fun.
oh my gosh. So like soft surface, which is great, but I'm sure the elevation gain and loss and the technicality and using different muscles absolutely wrecked your body.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and for my defense, I thought I was going to be running a flatter course outside, and I didn't know that a lot of these races you have to sign up way ahead of time, or you don't get in.
Oh,
Like they cap their numbers, And so I was planning on the Colorado Marathon was the one that I
Yeah.
was planning on doing on Mother's Day one year with my friend. And she said, like 3 or 4 weeks before the race, so you have your like registration and everything, right? And I'm like, no, what do you mean it's not for like a month? And she's like, it's closed. Like you can't even get registration at this point if you haven't gotten it. So because I had been
Oh,
training and because I had done or was close to an 18 miler, I think it was at a 16 miler at that point, I just looked for another marathon that was around the same time. And it was
okay.
in Vegas in the mountains, and it didn't tell me anything really about the course. So I showed up not knowing it was going to be like a trail ultra course.
Oh my gosh. How many of us can relate to that on some level? Like, how many of us have signed up for a race and we get there and we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into? I feel like I've had that experience. Like the first marathon I ran, I shared this I think on a recent podcast or maybe it was on the team call that I showed up for my race strategy meeting with Nell. I got to meet her in person. We met at Whole Foods in Boulder, like the Wednesday before my race. And we were talking about the course and she's talking about the hills. And I'm like, oh no, like the course I'm running is flat. It's like downhill. And she's like, it's net downhill which isn't the same. I'm like, what? So I actually drove the course the day before the race and I'm like, oh, okay, this is not flat. Like, this is short, snappy hills for the first half. But I think that's super relatable. I think a lot of us have done that,
That's how you
or at
learn,
least,
right? You
yeah,
put
yeah,
yourself in these
exactly.
situations and then you go, okay, next time I know what to expect. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's such a cool piece to running. And also, the coaching side of things, like as we go through cycles, as we're training ourselves, as we're coaching other athletes, we're learning and growing together. This is going to be a really good transition into the goal setting and planning portion of the episode. But how important is a well thought out plan in the coaching process, and how does it contribute to a runner's overall success?
I think it's really nice to have somebody else to think through all of those logistics for you because I think a lot of times we get so in our heads where we're kind of focusing on the wrong things and maybe not the right things, and then we're overthinking and doing so many crazy things because it's us. Whereas when you're an outsider looking in, you can really look at it from a logical, standpoint and go, okay, I know this person. I've worked with them before. These are the things that they've struggled with in the past. Let's make sure that in the plan we like build confidence in those areas. Let's look at the course. Let's make sure we know if it's going to be a faster start or slower start. If there's going to be like a pickup in the middle, kind of depending on the terrain. Um, let's figure out, um, their nutrition and their hydration and all of the things that are actually really important. And as a coach, you can really remind your athletes about things that they're going to forget, like getting enough sleep and foam rolling and using the massage gun, different things that they just are like, I just got to get the miles in. They start focusing on that too much, and so I think it's just really important to have a plan, but I think it's really nice to have somebody that can be in the outside looking in, going, okay, here's where you are, here's where I want you to be, here are the steps to get there. Trust the process, follow my plan, and you'll get there. And 9 times out of 10, it works out. But when you're trying to create your own plan, oftentimes there's a lot of things happening in your brain that can muddle, the result that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I think it's true even if you have a coach and you're still trying to create your own plan. Like
Right.
you're
That
going
makes sense.
off plan. That can be a tough place to be for sure. I think something that we don't talk about often is how coaches have spreadsheets. At
Mm-hmm.
least I have a lot of spreadsheets. Every athlete I coach has a spreadsheet, and their training cycles just build on top of one another. And I have a list. I have a running list of things that they're really good at, things that they're good at, and things that we need to work on. And it's something that I'm always thinking about. If it's, confidence, if it's motivation, if it's anxiety, if it's downhill running, if it lends itself, if you're running, let's say the Boston Marathon, certain things we absolutely have to work on with every single person running Boston. And that's, I think, a really fun inside baseball, like kind of look into the process of, or at least some of the planning process of what goes into helping an athlete achieve their goals and kind of knowing what's working, what's not working. Because I know as an athlete myself, the things that don't work for me are things I don't want to do. Like I remember filling out my form with Nell and saying hills and speed work are like the two areas that I really haven't done a lot of work in, and two areas that I really have no interest running either.
So
Like
she gave you hills and speed work right away, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we, it was she was in a tough situation because when I transitioned over to her, we only had 12 weeks to build for Chicago, and there was a lot of work to do. And the first thing we tackled actually was how I can finish a marathon without blowing up. And so we worked a lot of goal pace, marathon pace on tired legs at the end of workouts. We worked a lot of just marathon tempo, and that was just so brand new to me that that was enough of a stimulus going into Chicago, where I ran a really strong PR. And then since then, speed has been such a big, heavy focus. Hills have been a huge focus, and I'm at the point now where I actually like those workouts, and I'm not fearing those workouts, and that's a really cool place to be. So I think that that's kind of a big up level when you get uncomfortable and there's someone looking out for you saying this is going to make you a stronger runner. It might not be what you want to do, but over time you might eventually like it. That's a really cool piece to it all of it.
Yeah. Backtracking a little bit to when you were saying, sometimes people with coaches also try to make their own plans. I've done this before, so that's why I'm asking, but have you done that as well, where you have a coach telling you what to do and you decide that's not correct? Like what you should do is what's in your head and you kind of don't follow the plan 100%.
That's a great question. So over this summer specifically, I have shifted workouts a bit. I am a rule follower, Amber. I love my plan. I love sticking to my plan. If any of my teammates are listening to this right now, they're laughing because I am so like to the mile, even on like workout days. Like if I have 12 miles and I need to get those 12 miles in and the workout's over and I might have a 4 or 5 mile cool down. I'm like, all right, guys, we got to get going. Like, I got to get 4 or 5 miles in. Where some people I think are better at like listening to their bodies and saying, maybe I only need 3. I actually am the extreme. So I think that that can hurt me. Like over the spring, I had such intense training that I should have said something and shifted and pivoted the training on days that I wasn't feeling well. But
Mm-hmm.
instead, I stuck to the plan so tightly. I hung on to it so tightly that it ended up hurting me in the process. But this summer, I've been shifting. I have like right now, I have Wednesday workouts, Saturday workouts, Sunday long runs. And over the summer, that can get to be a lot when you want to go out and have fun and have some sort of a social life. So, some weeks I've been shifting my Saturday to Friday and then long run to Saturday. So I get Sunday to kind of like sleep in and maybe run a little bit less, something like that. And I've only done it if it's, well, sometimes I've had to do it just with like things going on, but I really try and make sure that it's also going to work for me because there's a very short recovery window between my Wednesday workout and then Friday workout.
Yeah. Yep.
What about you?
And that's key, I think, listening to your body. For me, it was the opposite. It was, I would have coaches saying, you're fine. You only need one 20 miler in this marathon training cycle. or you really only need to run 40 miles this week. It's okay, you can have a cutback week. And I just have had, I'm over this now, but I've had in my past a hard um, lesson to learn about just doing too much. I think because I don't have the innate like athletic ability and I didn't grow up in sports, I think that my claim to fame is just my work ethic. And so when I think, am I going to be able to succeed? The only way I can tell myself, yes, you can succeed is if I know I've done everything, and everything should be what the coach is telling me, but instead everything in my head is like, all the miles, run all the miles, just keep running. So I've definitely fallen into the over trading syndrome in my life, and it's caused a lot of stress on my body and not gotten. I haven't had the results that I should have had because I was overtrained going into races.
Yeah, and it's such a balancing act, especially as we get older, on what we can and can't do, where we should be focusing our time, how much of it should be on running, how much of it should be on recovery and strength training and mobility and eating and sleeping, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
are all kind of like the big areas. And it's so easy to get into that tunnel vision of more, more, more miles.
Yeah.
It was Jonathan Levitt when I was training for my first Boston Marathon. I hit my peak week. It was like 62 or 63 miles. And I was so like excited to have 1 week at that mileage. And that's a really heavy mileage week. And I remember we were on a run and I was saying to him, like, I just want more. Like, I just want to add like a double or I want to add something. And I don't know if I actually would have done it because it's like one thing to say you want to do it, but it's actually another thing to do it. And his advice to me was like, don't be greedy with the miles because it'll eventually come back to
Mhm.
haunt you, right?
Yep.
And it's just so easy when you're feeling good to want to do it all.
And just to think that you have to like prove yourself. It's not even
Mhm.
proving yourself to others, but proving yourself to yourself. Like, I am strong, I can do this. But you have to kind of get over that because going into a race overtrained is not good.
No, I mean, there's nothing you can do
Yeah.
about it. It's not like a
Yeah.
fueling issue where you take a gel and you kind of come back to life on the course. You're not going to be able to run through it, and you also don't know what's on the other side of that because you don't know how long it's going to take to recover. Everyone is so different with it,
Yeah.
and that's a really scary place to be too.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. How was having a coach, and you've had a few coaches, personally impacted your ability to reach your goals? Has there ever been a coach that has maybe said to you, "I think you can do X," and you're like, "Wow, that seems like a really aggressive goal. I don't think I can do it," but then you actually did it?
Yeah. Definitely. I think all of the coaches I've had that's happened. I think the mind training was key with my last coach. He was much more, he felt that really believing in myself and following the plan and having fun was more important than getting all the miles in, continually asking for more miles, wanting to go faster speeds than what was on my plan, all of the things that I was trying to bug him with all
Mm,
the time. And so he taught me to chill out and to enjoy the run. And that's where I think I really kind of started to flip in my whole mentality of, this isn't all about numbers on paper. This isn't all about, you know, trying to see a spreadsheet and see all the data and go, okay, now I know I can run this race fast. Instead, it's a feeling and it's effort and it's your body with muscle memory, learning how to adapt and how to be flexible, and then enjoying the process, and then getting to the race day and just having a blast instead of being super anxious, worked up, stressed out, overtrained, and then not knowing why you couldn't run fast, which was what
yeah.
happened to me several times.
Yeah, and that's such a scary place to be. All of that. How long did it take you to shift your mindset from runner A to runner B?
I mean, I started working with him maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So it's not been, and I've been running for, um, 15, 16 years. So it was a while. It was a long process, but I had a lot of miles under me. I had a lot of races. I had a lot of experiences. And so then when I made that mind shift change, it was like everything kind of fell into place more, because I already had the fitness and I already had the experience. And now I was changing my mindset, and it was kind of like a whole nother gear that I could access.
Yeah, I mean, the mind is so powerful when we're racing, when we're running workouts. It can make or break us, really. Do you remember something that he said to you that specifically stands out when you were kind of in this transition that kind of made you like the light bulb really went off and you're like, oh, yeah, like I really do need to make this shift?
It was just he was so caring and so wanting to know how I was doing personally
Hmm.
in my life, how work was, how my family was. He cared about all the things outside of running, and I wasn't used to that. And so I'm like, why is he asking me these questions? I don't understand. um, but that's where, because when I would start freaking out about I didn't hit these paces on this workout, what does this mean? Do we need to change the race plan? He'd be like, are you okay? Like, how's work? How's your family? Like, kind of step back. And I would finally,
Hmm.
um, I just really trusted him. And so then he would be like, okay, so now you're going to trust me and you're going to do the workouts that I give you, and you're not going to go faster and you're not going to run more miles, and you're going to have fun and you're going to smile. And he would just kind of like, it was just matter of fact. But also, he was just so positive about everything that it was kind of contagious, Like, I just realized running is something I choose to do and I love it. It's not something I have to do, and it's not a chore, and I don't need to prove anything to myself or others. I'm doing it because I love it.
Yeah, and I think that that's a feeling that a lot of us or some people lose along the way. And it could be because they're hyper focused on paces, they're hyper focused on the comparison game, they're hyper focused on the outcome goal, and they're not bringing it back to that we get to do this every day. This is something that we love, or we we have some amazing goals that we're going after and we want to give. I don't know, if you don't love it and you're training for a marathon, I don't really know what you're doing because I know Austin, who was on this podcast for like a year and a half, he would always say like you really have to love running to train for the marathon. And I think it's so true because it is going to test you time and time and time again. And even if you are training for a half marathon, that can still be true, or training for a half marathon distance. Did this coach write your workouts, Amber, in paces, or did he prescribe effort to try? Because I could see the effort coming into play to just try and release the expectation, but I could also see you as an athlete, if you wanted to run faster, you could justify that effort and say, no, coach, 7 out of 10 really is, what 9 out of 10 felt like for you.
Yeah, he started with paces and very quickly learned that he should give me efforts
Hmm.
um, because of how I process things. So he did, and because I would just feel like a failure oftentimes when I wouldn't hit those paces. And so efforts were put in, and then things changed pretty rapidly that way too. Because being female, some days of the month your effort feels very different than other days, and your paces show that. But it doesn't diminish
Definitely.
from the fact that that effort was there. So, my pace could even range like within, 45 seconds to a minute on speed work, which is a lot when you're running at those type of paces, but the effort was there. And so the next, few days later, when I'm feeling more energetic, the paces just come easier at that same effort. So effort is key for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hormones are so annoying some days. And like, yeah, I mean, just some days are just hard. And I had a male coach for a few years, and it was just there was just a disconnect on certain things, and that was one of them. And it's just if you don't know or you don't have the education around it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think us as females too, we can absolutely track our cycles. We can kind of know maybe when we're in like getting closer to that luteal phase or in that luteal phase when things feel harder, and we might need to pull back effort. We might need to pull back mileage. We might need to go on like more walks and kind of keep things on the low. It's great
Mhm.
for a recovery week. But yeah, I mean it's still like it can still kind of come in and sneak in on any given day. I'm curious to know with the effort based coaching, did you ever think, okay, this is effort, this is the pace for the day, but you had that comparison game with yourself and you thought, but I used to be able to run this pace, which is faster over here a year ago at the same effort. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, all the time. I have an athlete right
Yeah.
now actually, and she was messaging me just the other day, and she said, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't run any paces faster than a 9 or a 620 right now, even speed work. My legs just won't do it." And they have in the past a ton. And so when I
Yeah.
give her short segments, it's usually low sixes, and she's like, "I can't do it. I don't know what's wrong with me." And you could tell that she was starting to like second guess everything, like her fitness. Has she ever even run this fast before? Was that even her? Like she was just kind of spinning. And I'm like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It could have just been today, and you're feeling like this is a thing that's going on. It could be for the week, it could be longer, but we'll track it and we'll figure it out, and we'll get somewhere. We'll find results. So right now, what we're doing, because it did turn into a few different workouts that she was having a hard time getting to those faster paces. And so instead of these longer tempos, we're just hitting 30-second repeats, 1 minute repeats. We're just doing that faster leg turnover for shorter amounts of time. And then we'll start to kind of
Mm.
go longer as those feel good. Just kind of backtracking there and then having the longer runs as well, but really focusing on that short speed and that faster leg turnover to where she can feel confident in that and then kind of build on that. And sometimes that happens. Like sometimes you feel great for a while and then your long runs feel amazing and your short speed feels awful or vice versa, and that's okay. Like depending on what you're trying to do, if you're trying to go for shorter races like 5Ks, then you might need to kind of dial back the longer runs and really focus in and hone in on that shorter speed and just really work on fast turnover even for 30 seconds at a time.
Yeah, I mean, that's great coaching. That's great coaching. I yeah, I'm definitely thinking of a few athletes right now that have had that issue in the past, and it almost gets to a point where they're just so frustrated, whether it's with themselves, their past self, that they just don't want to continue running, and that's like such a heartbreaking place to be. How much of it do you think is the mindset of that individual?
Yeah, mindset's huge. The other thing I told her, like we
Yeah.
were just talking about, is I said start tracking your cycle because she
Yeah.
wasn't. And I think that I've seen this a lot before with her, like where it's like a few days where she thinks she's lost all fitness and then it bounces back. And so I'm like, start tracking it because you're going to see patterns and then you're not going to beat yourself up because you'll just know this is what happens every month during these days. So she's gonna start doing that. But also, yeah, I've seen it in so many people, including myself, where it's just like, I don't know how I ever ran those fast paces, but I suck now. So I don't even want to try because I suck and it makes me feel terrible to like be running so slow right now. But that's all in your head.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be running slower than you have been, but that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that your body's probably tired. It's telling you something, and we got to mix things up, as a coach for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been there too. Like this spring, I couldn't get past like what would be considered half marathon effort. and I would like maybe touch half marathon effort. And this could be in tempos. This was also actually happening on the track when I was supposed to be running fast. And I would get like 400 meters in a half marathon, maybe 2, 3 minutes. And then I'd just start to slow down and I'd be running marathon pace. And that felt like 5K pace. And that's like a big red flag,
Mm-hmm.
big red flag, especially if it's happening workout after workout after workout. I think there's something to be said about if this is an experience, if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, that is me, or that's been something I've struggled with in the past. It's like mixing up your training for sure. Also assessing your hormone level, your cycle, if you're a
Sleep.
female, and for all of us, checking in on that stress. Is there stress outside of running? Is it coming from work? Is it coming from family? Is it coming from community? Where is it coming from? And what is the stress around? Is it a disconnect between Dr. Laura Pence was on the podcast in May, and she was talking about this disconnect between when a runner who runs and trains and then like family life. And when that's a disconnect, when the family isn't embracing the training and vice versa, how much of an impact that can make on the athlete. And I just thought that that was really interesting because I've never really heard anyone talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
but it is something to just consider: the stress, the mindset, mixing up training, taking more rest, all the things.
Yeah, and I know more than anyone, life stress can take a huge toll on you physically. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that if you dig yourself too deep, which with my personality, I did, I just kept going, okay, but if I keep getting my runs in, I'll be okay, even though I was going through a lot of heightened stress in my life. And really, it just kept getting worse. So I also think that my low ferritin levels were because I was just empty. I was like, had nothing left. So it all kind of came to a standstill because it started with life stress and then I kept pushing and pushing physically as well. So I think that's something to really be aware of and try to figure out where's the stress coming from, what can I do? What are some strategies that I can take? Is it like yoga? Is it meditation? Is it going on walks? Is it talking with somebody? What are the things that you can do to kind of try to minimize that stress? And then also, like, do you need to not run as hard? Do you need to put workouts aside for a little while and just run for fun? What are things that you need to do to make yourself kind of start to bounce back and feel less stress overall? Because it can be a huge it can you can just really get yourself in a deep pit if you just keep going.
You can, and I think that's the scary piece to it. It's scary with stress, it's scary with overtraining. You don't know how far in the hole you are until you get out of the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a concern I had going into Cherry Blossom and like racing. And I had expressed that it was race week on the track. It was Wednesday. My race was on Sunday. And I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to race. I don't want to run hard for 10 miles and feel like crap. And Nell's like, okay, so go to Cherry Blossom and run for fun. So I still tried to race and but I was really nervous about like what kind of impact that was going to make after the fact. But we took 6 weeks of very considerable like downtime to give me the space to really well, I wanted to run, but I also wanted to feel good running, and I wasn't like there was zero feel good runs. So I think some of us can relate to that too. It's like you just want to make sure that you're doing enough. You're not going overboard, you're not getting it too deep into a hole because it can absolutely, yeah, you just don't know how long it's going to take for you to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah, you just have to really pay attention to those cues.
Absolutely. Let's transition over to self coaching. I know we have a lot of people listening who are self coached, and I'd love to know from your perspective why you self coached yourself for a period of time.
Yeah, and I did before my first coach, and then I have in between coaches as well. And there's been lots of reasons for that. Prior to having a coach, I didn't know about a coach. I didn't know what they could do for you, right? So I was
Yeah.
just kind of going with what I heard from people and things I read and all that kind of good stuff. After having a coach, there were periods of time in between where I'm like, I'm just going to try this. I'm super self motivated. I'm not going to just sleep in and not run. And I know enough now where I can create my own plans. And I did, and I had some success there. I think the one thing that really I enjoyed having a coach for is just the keeping me from overtraining with my personality. I would give myself too much because it felt good to say I ran an 80-mile week. And there's no, and that's just silly.
Yeah.
Like that's just silly. So um, there were a lot of nice aspects of coaching myself because I could really feel I could really take into account how I felt that week. I could plug in workouts that I really liked. There were a lot of aspects that I liked about it, but feel like I wasn't seeing as much success as I did when I had coaches.
That's really interesting. I know that there can be a lot of like freedom that comes with it. You can kind of move things around, not feel guilty. You don't have to like check in with someone. I know I have athletes who check in with me, to move anything, and I have others that just do it. And, I'm surprised when I get into the training log, which is fine. And yeah, I think what I love so much about your story is that you've had seasons where self coaching worked for you, and there were seasons where you knew you needed to partner with a coach to be the best version that you wanted to be, and or, holding you back to be the best version that you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
What was kind Yeah, like what was like the biggest challenge that you faced when you were coaching yourself?
I think just figuring out like where I should be easier on myself, where in
Yeah.
the actual training plan I should push. Even though we know as coaches, like you build and then you have a peak and then you taper, like the normal cycle of things. For
Yeah.
yourself, you're like, but what if I got extra miles in? What if I got these extra hard workouts in? Would that then pay off and I would have a faster race?
Mhm.
Like you just think all of these things that you would never do with the people that you coach, but you use yourself as a guinea pig sometimes because you just think maybe you can handle it and maybe the result will be even better. So I think that was, I did have some periods and some seasons that were successful coaching myself, but I would say the more successful periods, like my PR races, have been with a coach.
That's so cool. I feel like if I've been pretty open about like never wanting to coach myself, at least at this stage in my training career and running career, because I feel like I wouldn't push myself hard enough. Like I'd probably give myself the workouts that I want to do and not the workouts that I need to do. And I think that that's like a really interesting kind of piece to all of it. And yeah, but again, there's seasons of being able to shift into that and it worked well for you. And then there were seasons where you shifted back into partnering with a coach and having that success on the other side of maybe more of that outcome kind of category.
Yeah.
How would, yeah, like how would you say that your perspective on success has changed over the years as an athlete?
Oh, it's night and day different. I think when I first started running, and even up until about 8 years ago or so, it was all my success was tied to numbers. It was, if I reached my goal or exceeded my goal, then it was a success. If I didn't, it was a failure.
Mhm.
And actually, one story about that is I don't even remember the year, but there was a year that I had a goal to run the Boulder, and I wanted to run it fast. And so I had trained, and I lived near Boulder, and so I was, knew the course well, and I was going to run it fast in my head. But I got out there, and I'm sure it was because I had been doing too many miles leading up to the race. I got to like mile 3.5 and I was toast. Like my legs were toast. And I just was looking at my watch every like quarter mile and it was just slowing down drastically every quarter mile. And instead of just taking a deep breath and going, okay, what pace can I run? Revert to effort, stop looking at your watch, get to the finish line, and then you can chill out. Like when you get to the finish line, you can die and then figure out what you're going to do next time for a 10K. Instead of that, I stopped dead in my tracks and just stood there. I just
Oh,
stood there looking at my watch like I missed my goal. Like there's no way I can make my goal at this point. And so I just
so I'm
stood
just gonna
there.
stop.
Yeah, I just stood there and I was like, what do I do? And then my ego kicked in because I was like, I've got to like figure out a way because I had friends that were running and everyone was going to be at the
Yeah,
finish line. And I was like, what can I do to like how am I going to explain that I just stood there for like a minute and doing nothing? And so my son and my husband were running and they were way back in a different wave, right? And so, because they were running for fun. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to go run back to them and then go with them. And then I'll just tell people I decided to run with them. Like that part of my ego was like, you have to have an excuse for this. So I did that, and then I just thought to myself, that was so stupid. Like, the ego is, nobody cares. Nobody cared. None of my friends cared. They were just worried about me, like, where did she go? But if I had explained that I was off my time and I just felt like a failure and I stopped and, recalibrated and then went again, they wouldn't have cared. So
right.
that was just silly. And I learned a lot that day. And I haven't ever done that since. But it's like you've got to have an A goal, a B goal, a C goal, and a just finish goal. Like you can't just stop not knowing what to do because you missed your A goal?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, but I think it's so relatable. Like, I think we've all been there in that sense of maybe we wanted to or we didn't know how to shift and pivot. If it's like, "Oh, wow, this one goal that I had is, like, so not happening." Like, what do I do? Do I stop? Do I keep going? How do I get through this? I The Boulder course is a tough course to
Yeah,
run fast on.
yeah.
It's yeah, what is it? Like over 200 feet of elevation gain. It's a lot of, I would consider like, there's two big hills, maybe three, but it's like a lot of false flats. And when you're running at altitude and you're running on a false flat for like a mile, it just sucks the life out of you. Absolutely sucks the life out of you. And like,
It's a hard course for sure.
mhm,
But,
absolutely. Have you,
I mean, no matter what, you're gonna, even if it was a flat course and I was having a bad day, like no matter what, you're gonna come into circumstances where things are just not going your way and you have to kind of move along to another goal. And you gotta be flexible with yourself. And if you're not hitting paces, then don't worry about your dang watch. Like it's not gonna be helpful to looking at your watch to know that you're not hitting your times. Like revert to effort, do your best, and if when you finish, if you've done your best and you've given it your all, then you should be dang proud of yourself.
yeah, absolutely. It's very easy, I think, to look down at the watch, realize what's happening. Anxiety is through the roof. Your heart rate's probably through the roof. It's not helping anything or anyone. And the importance of an A, B, and C goal is so important that you can shift and pivot between one goal or the other. Oftentimes, I'll coach on athletes maybe starting at the beginning of B if they are really nervous about their A goal and checking in halfway through the race. How are they feeling? Do they want to bump up to A? Do they want to stay at B? Are they holding on to C? Kind of what, it's kind of a nice way to go about it, but I think it feels better going into a race having an A, B, and C goal for sure.
Yeah, that's
Um,
smart to coach that way. I feel like they need to know that they have those choices because who knows what can happen that day. They could feel sick. They could have not gotten a lot of sleep the night before. There could be a torrential downpour. All of those things have
right.
happened, to my athletes, and it's like you got to just throw your, a. Actually, interestingly though, I had an athlete run a marathon just recently, and she was texting me before and she's like, it's going to be the worst weather. We're going to have all this rain. It's super like hot, humid rain, just It's going to be terrible. She was like freaking out. And I'm like, it's okay. You're just going to wake up. You're actually, they were thinking about canceling the race. And so she was getting really
Oh,
worried,
geez.
like, I'm going to wake up and it's going to be canceled anyway. I'm like, okay, well, you're just going to go to bed and you're going to wake up and you're going to see if it's canceled. And if it's not canceled, then you're going to show up and you're going to have fun and do your best. You just revert to effort, run hard, and have fun. And she ended up having a PR. Like,
That's incredible.
it was like you just had a PR in a torrential downpour. So what does that mean if it was like ideal conditions? Come on, you know. So,
Yeah, and just, like, the stress leading into that race, which isn't ideal, like, that's
I
amazing.
know I was like, wait, what? I was tracking her, her progress, and I'm like, what is she doing? I was going so fast.
She's going for it.
Yeah, yeah, it was exciting.
It is exciting. It is exciting. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about I have an athlete this weekend. He's racing a marathon in Iceland, and he texted the group. I coach him one-on-one, but he also gets to come to the team workouts on Wednesday nights, and we have a WhatsApp thread. And he texted in the WhatsApp thread that there's like a potential for a volcano eruption or something,
What?
and I'm like, all right, Chris, well, you're fit, you're ready, like, you're going to be great. It's going to be fine. He's like, I boarded the flight. Everything's fine. Everything's going to be great. I'm like, okay.
A volcano
Um,
eruption.
right? Like, of all the things, I'm like, what else can get thrown at not just this runner, but I think runners in general? It's like we as coaches, we experience, dozens and dozens of stories and experiences and things that people go through. And it's absolutely wild to see and hear things that go on within like the training cycle, within races, and how people flow through it and power through it. And it's really inspiring. Um, I know for myself, sometimes when I'm in workouts, sometimes when I'm racing, if I'm in kind of a sticky spot, I'll like coach myself through it
Mm-hmm.
and like, kind of like say to myself, like what I would say to an athlete I coach, or maybe what I think my coach would tell me.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always translate on race day in my experience. And I think that that's really interesting. Have you had that experience before where like you do something and maybe it's, a different story from the Boulder, but like you do something and you're like, wow, why did I just do that? I would never coach that, but I did it anyways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do things like they'll like when they hit a spot in a longer race or something where they're just having a really hard time mentally,
Hmm.
they'll I've heard some people do like, I'm gonna dedicate this mile to my mom or dedicate this mile to my husband or whatever, and they think about
Yeah.
that person for the whole mile so that it's like something to keep their mind occupied and to focus on. I've also heard people do like mantras. None of that has ever worked for me. I don't know. I don't know why. The only thing that works for me when I get into that headspace of like, this sucks and I want to stop right now is I just count footsteps. Like, I literally, my
Nice.
whole mind is completely blank other than 1, 2, 3, 4, and I count footsteps. And it kind of just takes away the pain and what
Mhm.
I'm doing, and it just puts me in a zone. And I know too, because I've done it so many times, how many footsteps on the right and on the left like equals a mile, and all of this this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow, that's
So
so cool.
yeah. So anyway, it just puts me into a better headspace. But I think it's just so individual. You have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely we as coaches um, don't always do the best things that we would tell athletes to do. We kind of
No.
throw all of those rules out the window and think that we're invincible and can do all sorts of crazy things.
And I think we're human too, well, I know we're human.
Yeah.
I don't know if our athletes know that sometimes, but we are human. We do make mistakes. I think about my CIM race last year, and there was one goal. I had one time goal. There was a range on the time goal,
Hmm.
but there was a pace progression. There was just one pace progression,
So
starting at
like,
7:03 to 7:05, cut down to like 6:55 in the second half. Great.
was
I
the
started
overall
out
time
doing that.
goal like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, or was it small? Like, how big was the time goal overall range?
So for this run, for this marathon, I had a 10-second cut down,
Okay.
which is a pretty small range for me. I usually have like when I ran my PR in Chicago, I started around 7:40 pace, and then in my sweet spot in the race, I was running about 7:10,
Mm-hmm.
so about a 30-second cut down.
Mm-hmm.
I averaged 7:20 that day.
Gotcha. So this was,
Yeah,
you weren't dealing with a lot of wiggle room.
no. And I blew up. I didn't know I was blowing up, which is also one of the most wildest things to happen on a marathon course when you're like running the same effort and your clock like or your watch like clicks over to the mile, and it was like mile 13 or 14, and I look down and I'm like 30 seconds slower. What? Like, that was the same effort. And then I was like, well, this race is over. I think I like gave it like one more mile to like really try and like see if I could get back there. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I lose focus? Because it had been something that was happening in workouts late last year. And I thought, okay, I lost focus. I just need to get back into it. And I couldn't get any faster than like 7:30, 7:35. And I was like, well, this race is over. So I started to jog. I didn't even like, so I was running like 8-minute miles, which felt like a jog on that day. But I thought it was interesting after the fact. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't whether, Nell didn't give me a B or C goal, which is fine, but like it's so interesting because that's how I coach on the importance of having that. And I didn't do it. I didn't have one for myself. And I just like jogged it in. And I could have ran like, something in between a 3:05 and a 3:15. And instead I ran like closer to 3:16, which is okay.
Yeah.
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 I would love to hear a success story that you have, maybe from one of your coaching clients that stands out to you. An inspiring story. Maybe it's like a coaching success where they really heard you and they were able to kind of like flow through some things. Do you have one to share?
I mean, there's a lot. I think
Yeah.
I've had everything from, somebody running their first 5K, which is to me just as exciting as somebody running their first marathon. Um,
Yeah.
it's actually sometimes more exciting because they were not a runner and they've built up enough endurance to run this 5K, and it's a big deal, and they run it and they feel so accomplished. Like, it's just, I remember my own self when I ran my first 5K. I remember when I ran my first 10K being like, I just ran 6.2 miles. Like, I thought it was like the best thing ever.
Yes.
So I remember those things. And so I've had a ton of success stories. I have had a few athletes that really, really, really wanted to make Boston. And one athlete that's been with me since day one. So I've been coaching her for 4 years. And as soon as I said, oh, I got my coaching license, she's like, I'm in. So she's amazing. And all she wanted to do was to qualify for Boston. And so she got that goal. She's qualified since several times, but that first time, you would have thought it was Christmas. Like, she was just ecstatic.
Oh.
And then, when you have to register and see if your time was enough to actually be able to run the race, she was just so happy. I mean, giddy. And so that just rubs off on you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point in my life, uh, I enjoy seeing other people achieving so much more than myself at this point. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that's just because I'm getting older, because I'm like doing other activities other than running too. I don't know, but I just accomplishing my own goals isn't top priority, but watching my athletes succeed and feel confident and feel proud of themselves is kind of everything to me right now.
Yeah, it gives back in a way that like very few other things can, I think. Like it's one of the best, in my opinion, like one of the best feelings ever to like feel like athletes are achieving their goals, they're really excited, they're learning, they're growing, they're grateful, all of those things. It's like it's a really cool space to be in. Race season is so fun.
I though every time I get texts from people um, when they finish racing, or even if I'm just tracking them, I'm like crying the whole time because I'm so
Oh,
happy for them, or I'm so like
yeah.
sad for them if they're not hitting what they want to hit, and I know they're probably like struggling or feeling really emotional about it. But I always try to like maintain a tough, exterior because I don't want to be like the person that's just bawling all the time. But I've had people pick up the phone and I'm the first person that they call, like, I did it, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God. Like I can't even keep it in because I'm just so happy for them.
Yeah, the emotions that run and flow through on race day, not just with athletes but coaches, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's always, it's obviously fun to see the people who are running their A goals and achieving everything that they want to achieve and they're so excited. And then there's, the other side of the coin where if especially if you have a group running, I typically have there's a lot of people running Chicago, all the majors. It's a balancing act of emotions on those days where you get to celebrate the people that had great days and then you get to support the people that didn't. And it's a sea of emotions,
So
this
much.
sport, that is for sure.
I
But it gives back to us in so many ways.
I think we feel it all though because we've been
Yeah.
like we've had all of those emotions for ourselves. And so when we
Yeah.
see other people having a good race or a bad race or an in between race or whatever, we're like, yep, I remember
Yeah.
that. And so all of those emotions kind of, come pouring back.
Yeah. I think that's so true. What is your favorite workout to either run yourself or prescribe for an athlete?
I do a lot. I am very inventive in my workouts. My
Yeah.
coaches that I coach know I just love coming up with my own new workouts. And so I have all sorts of crazy workouts. Um, I think hill repeats though are one of my favorite just because they really help your form. They really
Yeah.
help your endurance. They help your form. They help those muscles that you need. Um, and they're like for me, I'd rather run up a 30-second hill than run flat on a track of 400.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
want to, and also maybe part of that is because you can revert to effort because you're not watching your pace going up a hill.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's nice to just take the pace out of it and just run your might, up this hill. I love those, but also I have all sorts of fun ladders and even tempo ladders. Um, I've even coined different terms for some of my workouts that I've created myself. So I have a lot of fun creating workouts.
I love it.
What
I love it. And that's why I think we get along so well. We make a great team because I don't know if you saw it, like I had a big smile on my face when you were giving your workouts because like hill workouts, absolutely so phenomenal. I think the lowest intensity style workout with the most bang for your buck. Like you're just getting so much out of hill repeats. And the running form piece is like clutch, right? That's so awesome. And then, so my response was going to be, I love 400s. And I think that's why we make a great team, is because, like, we have, obviously we have a lot of the same, like, coaching philosophies and we have, like, the same mindset and we want to give and we're positive and we're creative, but we have like different, style workouts and things that we really love to do. And that's so fun because like give me a 400-meter workout any day. I love that workout.
Well, I have an athlete right now who does the Manitou incline often.
That's
That's on
great.
her training cycle because she lives close by and she's an ultra trail runner, so it's kind of
Yeah.
perfect. But I'm like, yeah, this isn't something I would just give to everybody often. The Manitou incline, it's a hard
That's
one.
such a good workout. Can
Yeah,
you describe quickly like what it is for the people listening who don't know?
it's a mile and it's steps and it's basically straight up. I've hiked it only once. I just don't live near that area. But it's like you're breathing so hard by the time you get to the top of it. And yeah, people do it even in the winter when it's full of ice and snow and all of that
My
fun
worst
stuff.
nightmare.
Yeah. This girl though, she like goes up it, runs around, so there's like a trail that, connects back, and then she does it again. So
The Oh my gosh.
sometimes a
So
couple times.
does she run down the bar trail then, like the side trail that
Side trail, not down the
yeah.
steps. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's how you know you're fit because that pitch about three-fourths of the way up this incline, it gets very steep.
Mm.
Like I'm kind of afraid of heights. I'm kind of afraid of ice and just like anything where I can fall. And I've only done it once before. And I was with my boyfriend at the time and I was faster than he was. And like we weren't staying together. So I stopped and I like turned around to wait for him. And it only worked up until like three-fourths of the way up the incline. And then I said to him, like, I just have to keep going because it's just so steep that I'm getting sick. Like standing here and turning around, I feel like I'm going to fall off. Like
Yeah.
it's wild.
And some people turn around and go back down the steps, and
I
even in
know.
winter, I'm like, how are you not just sliding down the whole way? It's
I know. No, oh my gosh. I would probably have a panic attack. Like that is like one of my worst nightmares ever. Okay, well, this has been a super fun episode. We kind of went off in some offshoots, so we didn't cover all of the questions that we had laid out for today, but hopefully you join us again, Amber, and we make this a more routine thing because it was a lot of fun to talk with you and chat with you. But I'd love to know in our last question of the day, like if someone is maybe self-coached, they're not coached right now, but maybe they're thinking about partnering with a coach. What is something that you would say to them to encourage them to kind of take that next step?
I would say just try it. It doesn't,
Yeah.
if you haven't tried it before, you should just try it. And even if you have tried it before, every coach is different. Um, I had a lot of very different experiences with all three coaches. And obviously, if the first one was perfect, I would never have probably switched. But I learned a lot from each one, and I feel like I'm a better, stronger runner because of all of those experiences. Also, it's not scary. It's not like you're committing to, a long time with this person that you may or may not like. You'll be able to figure it out and figure out if it's working for you pretty quickly. And if it's not working out, we as coaches just want you to be happy. We want you to achieve your goals. So I think give it a shot. Don't worry about it not working out. Go into it with positivity, and I think it would be a great move for most anyone. But if it doesn't work for you, that's okay too. You tried it.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's like that mindset of life is now. Let's do it. Let's jump in. And most coaches, I can't say all, but most coaches are there to help and they're there to help you grow and learn and achieve. And sometimes I say, like, I've had some athletes leave and have not, switched coaches. They just haven't had a coach. And it's bittersweet because I say like to them and to others, this is something I say, like we almost kind of put ourselves out of business in a way because like our goal is to teach runners how to train smarter, more efficiently, more effectively, taking them to new highs, new levels, and they're growing along the way. And then at some point, they don't necessarily need us anymore. Um, and that can be like a really bittersweet thing for coaches and I'm sure for the athlete too. But it is actually like one of the greatest gifts is like seeing someone use the knowledge, use the experience that they've learned through coaching and apply it to their own running. And maybe they're, quote unquote self coach. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to see people succeed and be continue to love running, to have it, lifelong sport.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining the
Sure.
episode, Amber. This was so much fun. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sarah. Take care.
Bye.